Raise your hand if you are a people pleaser. Hi, it's me. When I was first building my freelancing business, I said yes to everything and everyone. This is a terrible idea. Learn from my mistakes. Once you get into this habit, it's a really difficult mess to clean up. So in this video, we're going to talk all about how to set healthy professional boundaries as a freelancer. This is in your best interest and your clients. Otherwise, you fall into this very toxic trap of hustle culture, which I have a video on, and then it's going to be even harder to kind of work your way out of that hole. Before we get into this, I want to offer you a gentle reminder. As a freelancer, you are a business owner. Okay? This is not an employee-employer relationship, and you are not at your client's mercy. You are running a business and you call the shots. Okay, that being said, let's get into it. Tip number 1, write down everything you want and don't want. Sounds simple, do it anyway. When you get your thoughts down on paper and they're in front of you and they're tangible, it makes it a lot easier to be clear about your boundaries and also to stick to them. Let's do an easy example. I don't take meetings after 5 p.m. during the weekdays. So I would write that down and I would put it on my desk somewhere where I can easily see it. And that way, if a client comes to me and they're like, oh my God, my week is slammed, can we just have a quick call this weekend? I can immediately say, without having to think about it, my availability is Monday through Friday until 5 p.m. PST. Get detailed with this. That was a very easy example, but think of things like your preferred method of communication. Are you okay with texting? I'm not. I don't recommend it for you either. So that's a boundary I set from the very beginning. I know that my clients can reach me by email, or if they want to have a phone call, they need to let me know in advance. How you want to receive feedback. I'm a writer and I submit almost all of my work in a Google Drive doc, and the client then leaves track changes. That way, there's always a paper trail, and it also makes it easy for us to work on a document together. My clients know that whatever changes they want to see, put it in track changes. That way, if a client tries to call me up out of the blue and start rattling off all these edits, I know exactly what to tell them. How early you are willing to get up. I say this because a lot of us are working with clients across different time zones, and I've had clients who requested meetings that would end up being at some ridiculous hour for me, like 3 a.m. They don't know that, and why would they? It's not really their problem, but I know that that's a boundary for me. In the past, once upon a time, I would have maybe considered setting an alarm and getting up at 3 a.m. for a client call, but these days I'm thankfully much smarter than I was before, and I won't do that. My days, as far as my clients are concerned, start at 9 a.m., but I'm willing to be flexible because of different time zones. Every once in a blue moon, I will accommodate like a 7 a.m. meeting, but again, this happens probably a few times a year. Get into the nitty-gritty of what you're okay with and what you're not okay with, and write it down. If the thought of doing it makes you miserable, don't do it. You don't have to, because you're a business owner. Tip number 2, choose your words wisely. And here's what I mean by this. Let's say that a client requests a 6 a.m. meeting, which you already know you're not going to do. You don't want to say, I can't do that. Because when you say can't, it implies that you could, you're just not able to this time. And the client might keep asking. Instead, you want to say something like, I don't do meetings at 6 a.m. or I am available starting at 9 a.m. That way, you are setting a boundary. You are saying, I don't do this, but I can do that. Tip number 3, be blunt and concise. Because a lot of freelancers and their clients don't always remember that this is not an employee-employer relationship, freelancers often feel the need to justify themselves. In the previous example with the 6 a.m. meeting, the freelancer would maybe say, oh, I could do the 6 a.m. meeting, but I really don't want to because I typically work until 6 p.m. and if I get up at 6 a.m., that's a 12-hour day, blah, blah, blah. Not necessary. Not necessary. Say what you need to say and don't say anything else. This is how you can set boundaries with confidence. And you should be confident with your boundaries because they're good for you and the client. Instead, you can say something like, I'm not available for 6 a.m. meetings. Here's my availability. Done, period, end of story. Tip number 4, make it professional, not personal. This is an extension of the previous tip, but let's talk about it a little bit more. You do not need to justify your boundaries. They exist because, and that's it. And that even goes for boundaries that you set that might be a little more personal or specific to you. The 6 a.m. meeting, that one's a little more extreme and a little more obvious. Let's do a different example that maybe isn't so obvious. Let's say that you don't want to take any meetings past 3 p.m. And well, that's a little weird because typically the workday ends at 5 p.m. So why aren't you available those last 2 hours? Maybe it's because 3 p.m. is when your child gets out of school and you want to be there to pick them up and spend the rest of the day with them. Fine. You don't need to share your personal reason for not being available past 3 p.m. Your client isn't entitled to that information. Now, if you have the type of relationship with your client where you're a little more candid with each other and it's more friendly and it happens to come up in conversation, that's different. I'm not talking about that. What I'm saying is if you have a client trying to request meetings after 3 p.m. and 3 p.m. is your hard stop, all you need to say is, I am not available past 3 p.m. And that's it. Tip number 5, you want to point out the benefit for the client. This won't always come up, but sometimes it will. I said in the beginning of this video that boundaries are good for you and the client, and sometimes you might need to remind them of that. Let's say it's 12 p.m., middle of the workday, and a client emails you asking for something and they want you to turn it in by 5 p.m. that day. And you remind them of your boundary, that that's not enough notice for you. And let's say that they keep pushing. You can say, I cannot complete this by 5 p.m. at the quality that I've committed to. When you say this, you're telling them, hey, it's in your best interest to give me more time. Otherwise, I'm going to turn in garbage. Tip number 6, do it. Number 6, is that what we're on? Okay, tip number 6, do it early and often. This is where I really screwed things up. I waited years to set boundaries. It's embarrassing to me at this point how long I waited. And because I waited so long, it was really tough for me to get out of it. I had to undo so many bad, toxic habits. So for example, in the past, if a client had emailed me, at like 1 p.m. asking me if I could write a blog for them right now, I would drop what I was doing and I would do it. I would, agree to these ridiculously fast turnarounds, not even charge for a rush order, and that's just the service that they were used to. I stopped doing that. Now I know to give myself enough time to, A, get the work done, but B, I also give myself a little cushion so that I can over-deliver. If a client asks for something, spur of the moment on Monday, I might tell them that I can get it to them by the end of the week. So they're expecting it on Friday, but maybe I'm able to get it to them by Wednesday, and to them it's like, cool, it's early. And if not, if they get it on Friday, oh well, that's what I committed to in the first place. I did have a few instances where clients would say, is it really going to take that long? And I understand why they asked that. It's because they were used to me doing everything at the drop of a hat. My fault, not theirs. You can establish or reestablish better boundaries. Just know that if your clients are used to one thing and you start switching it up to another thing, it might be a little more challenging. It might take a little more elbow grease. You just have to be okay with that. You might have clients who repeatedly test your boundaries, and that's not to say they will do it maliciously. You got to remember they're running a business too. And I especially want you to keep this in mind if your point of contact with a client is just a random employee, okay? Bear in mind that they have a boss too. They probably have several bosses. So if they're breathing down your neck about something, it's probably because somebody's breathing down their neck. So that's just a reminder to always be friendly and polite and calm and professional while still staying firm and standing your ground and sticking to your boundaries. You might feel really uncomfortable at first setting boundaries and, verbalizing them to your clients. That's okay. That's why one of the first things I told you to do was to write them down so that first you can get really clear on them, but also you don't have to think about them when it comes time to communicate them. Let yourself feel uncomfortable. It's okay. You're not going to die. They're not going to die. Everything's okay. You will get more comfortable with these boundaries purely with repetition. And eventually, communicating boundaries will be no big deal. It will feel like second nature. I was really uncomfortable saying no for a long time. I wouldn't say no, I would say yes to everything. Now, I say no to a lot of things, but usually with an alternative. No, I can't do this, but I can do that. Boundaries! They're good. They're good for everybody. There's a saying, good fences make good neighbors. And what that means is that in order for a relationship to stay healthy and mutually beneficial, there need to be, say it with me, boundaries. Having healthy boundaries and, somewhat of a work-life balance is something that I talk about a lot with my students in Revenue Spark. And it's because if you want to build a freelancing business that's going to last and it's going to support you for years and years to come, you cannot burn the candle at both ends. I know because I tried. It doesn't work. You will end up burned out, exhausted, miserable, unproductive. It will backfire. Hustle culture is a scam. It is here to make you sick mentally and physically. And not only is it bad for you, but it's counterproductive and it's completely unnecessary. In our culture, we have this weird standard where the more you say yes, the more you bend over backwards, the more you work, the more you sacrifice relationships and mental health, the more successful you are. The busier you are, the more successful you are. The more tired you are, the more successful you are. It's all a scam, okay? You don't need to kill yourself to have a successful freelancing business. You don't need to say yes to everyone and cater to everyone to have a more successful business. When you set boundaries, when you respect yourself and respect your business, people are going to respect you more as well. My methods for landing clients might not be like the other ones that you've heard across YouTube or wherever else, but they work. If you want to learn more about how I land clients and how other freelancers are finding success with my process, then I've left a link below where you can learn more about my program, Revenue Spark. And if you're interested in possibly moving forward, the next step is to book a call and speak with me. Hey, look, you're still here. It means you liked this video. So I'd be really grateful if you could give it a thumbs up and support my channel. Tell YouTube that this content is valuable. And if you have any questions, just drop them in a comment and I'll see you next time.